Imagine an ordinary Tuesday morning. Nothing dramatic. No champagne, no fireworks, just a quiet house, a cup of coffee, and the soft glow of a laptop screen. You open your investment account like you've done hundreds of times before. But today, something feels different. The number staring back at you reads $752,000. For a moment, you just sit there. Not because you suddenly feel rich. You don't. Your life didn't change overnight. Your house looks the same. Your car is still parked in the driveway. But something subtle has happened. You've crossed a line that most people don't even realize exists. A line where the rules of money quietly change. Because somewhere between $500,000 and $1 million, something strange begins to happen. Your money starts behaving differently. And if you don't understand what's happening at this stage, you can accidentally destroy the very wealth you spent decades building. Today we're talking about that invisible line. The $750,000 threshold. The moment when money stops being something you manage and starts becoming something that can manage itself. Most of us grow up believing wealth works like a staircase. Step by step. Save a little, invest a little. Repeat for 30 years. It feels slow, linear, predictable. You start with $10,000, then maybe $50,000, eventually $100,000, and at that stage, every dollar you earn still feels like it comes directly from your effort. Your salary, your overtime, your discipline, you are the engine. You are the one pushing the numbers higher. But here's the part most financial advice never explains. Wealth is not linear forever. At a certain point, it bends. And when it bends, it begins to move in a direction your brain isn't naturally built to understand. Exponential growth. Let's talk about the math. Historically, the stock market has returned around 8 to 10% per year over long periods of time. Now imagine a portfolio worth $750,000. At an 8% return, that portfolio generates roughly $60,000 per year. At 9%, it's closer to $67,000 annually. Pause for a moment. That's about $5,000 per month. Not from a job, not from a side hustle, just from capital quietly doing its job in the background. And here's where the shift becomes real. If you are still contributing $1,000 per month to that portfolio, your contribution is now only a small fraction of the growth. The majority of the work is being done by the engine itself. This is the moment your portfolio stops acting like a savings account and starts acting like a machine. You would think reaching this point would feel safe. But ironically, this is where many people make their biggest financial mistakes. Because for most of their lives, they were trained to be builders. Builders grind. Builders save aggressively. Builders hustle. Builders believe success comes from effort. But at this stage, the game changes. You are no longer primarily a builder. You are becoming something else. A steward. Builders focus on accumulation. Stewards focus on preservation and intelligent growth. When your portfolio was $50,000, a 10% market drop meant losing $5,000. It hurt, but it wasn't life-changing. At $750,000, that same 10% drop becomes $75,000. That number suddenly feels enormous. It can trigger fear, an urge to protect what you've built. And many people respond to that fear by doing the most damaging thing possible. They retreat, they move their investments into cash, or into assets that barely grow. They think they're protecting themselves. But in reality, they are slowly shutting down the very engine that was supposed to carry them the rest of the way. Because volatility is not the enemy of wealth. Volatility is the price of admission. It's the rent you pay to keep the compounding engine running. Here's another idea most people never calculate. The future cost of spending. When someone with $50,000 spends $10,000 on a luxury purchase, the impact is relatively small. But when someone with $750,000 begins pulling money out of their investment engine, the numbers become very different. Imagine withdrawing $50,000 today. It feels manageable. But if that money stayed invested for another 20 years at 9%, it would grow to nearly $300,000. So the real question becomes, are you buying a $50,000 luxury, or are you spending $300,000 of your future freedom? At this stage, every major purchase carries a hidden multiplier. And once you see that multiplier, you never look at spending the same way again. One strategy experienced investors often use is sumeth. If you want to take more than $10,000 out of your investment engine, you wait 3 days. During those 72 hours, you calculate something simple. What would this money become in 20 years? Sometimes the answer changes your mind completely, because when the numbers are clear, impulsive spending suddenly looks very expensive. Crossing $750,000 is impressive, but it's not the final stage. Not even close. Because if the engine continues running, something remarkable can happen. $750,000 can eventually become $1.5 million, then $2 million, then $3 million. Not because someone suddenly worked harder, but because the system finally reached critical mass. The danger is that many people sabotage this stage. They slow the engine too early, or they panic during volatility, or they inflate their lifestyle too quickly. And the trajectory that could have produced generational wealth quietly disappears. Eventually, wealth stops being about numbers. Money becomes something else. Time, freedom, security, the ability to say no to things that once felt unavoidable, the ability to help family members, to support parents, to give your children a stronger starting point in life. And this is where stewardship becomes real, because wealth that isn't protected rarely survives. Taxes, legal issues, and poor decisions destroy fortunes faster than bad investments ever could, which is why serious investors eventually begin thinking about structure, asset protection, estate planning, tax efficiency, not because they are obsessed with moan. Why? But because they understand how fragile it can be. If you're still early in your journey, $750,000 might feel impossibly far away. But every long-term investor eventually realizes something important. Retirement is not really an age. It's a mathematical condition, a moment when your assets can generate enough growth to support your life without constant effort. And somewhere along that path, many people cross an invisible line. A quiet Tuesday morning, a small number on a screen, and the realization that the engine is finally running. If you enjoy thinking about money this way, not as hype, but as math and psychology, subscribe to the channel. Because here we don't chase shortcuts. We study the systems that quietly build wealth over time. There's another truth about wealth that almost nobody talks about. The moment your portfolio starts growing on its own, time begins to behave differently. When you are starting out, progress feels painfully slow. Your first $10,000 can take years. Your first $50,000 can feel like climbing a mountain. Every dollar feels like a battle. Every market drop feels personal. But once compounding truly begins to work, something fascinating happens. Time starts doing the heavy lifting. A portfolio that took 15 years to reach $750,000 might only need another 7 or 8 years to reach $1.5 million. And after that, the next million can arrive even faster. This is why experienced investors often say the first million is the hardest. Not because the number is magical, but because reaching that point means you have finally built a system that works without constant effort. And systems, once built correctly, are incredibly powerful. But there is another side to this story, because wealth is not just a mathematical game. It is also a behavioral one. Two people can start with the same amount of money invest in the same assets, and still end up in completely different places 20 years later. The difference is rarely intelligence. The difference is discipline. The ability to stay calm when the market is chaotic. The patience to keep investing when progress feels invisible. And the humility to admit that no one truly controls the market. The most successful investors in history understood this deeply. They didn't try to predict every movement. They didn't chase every opportunity. Instead, they focused on something much simpler: consistency. They allowed time and compounding to do what they were designed to do. And that mindset becomes even more important once your portfolio reaches the level we've been discussing. Because when the numbers get bigger, emotions get bigger too. A small decision suddenly carries large consequences. A moment of panic can erase years of progress, and a single impulsive move can disrupt an entire financial plan, which is why the real skill of long-term investing is not analysis. It's emotional control, the ability to remain rational while everyone else is reacting emotionally. If you look at the investors who quietly built something interesting, their lives often look surprisingly ordinary. They don't chase attention. They don't constantly upgrade their lifestyle. They simply allow their capital to keep working, year after year, decade after decade, because they understand something that most people overlook. Wealth is not created in dramatic moments. It is built in quiet years. Ordinary Tuesdays, small decisions repeated thousands of times. And eventually, those quiet decisions compound into something remarkable. Not just a large number in an account, but a life with options. The option to work because you enjoy it, not because you must. The option to spend time with people who matter. The option to design your life intentionally. And when you think about it that way, the real goal of investing is not about becoming rich as fast as possible. It's about building a system that slowly buys back your freedom, 1 year at a time, one investment at a time. And for those who stay patient long enough, the engine eventually does the rest. And maybe the most important realization is this: the people who eventually reach financial freedom rarely look extraordinary in the beginning. They don't have perfect timing. They don't predict every market crash. And they definitely don't discover some secret shortcut. What they do have is patience. The patience to keep investing when the results feel small. The discipline to stay calm when everyone else is reacting emotionally. And the long-term mindset to trust a system that works slowly but relentlessly. Because wealth, in its purest form, is not built through intensity. It's built through consistency. Quiet decisions repeated over years. Until one day you wake up on an ordinary morning, open your account, and realize the engine is finally doing most of the work for you. That moment doesn't come from luck. It comes from understanding how the system works and respecting the timeline. And that's exactly what this channel is about. Not hype. Not shortcuts. Just the real math and psychology behind building wealth in the modern world. So if you want to understand money at a deeper level, consider subscribing. Because the next video will break down something most people completely misunderstand: the 5 stages of financial independence and the invisible milestones that quietly separate those who struggle financially from those who eventually achieve complete freedom. Until then, keep the engine running. Trust the timeline. And I'll see you in the next one.